Good morning, everybody. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet. Welcome to our webinar.
And I see that we have two groups on. We have skills on, oh, three. We have manufacturing renaissance, skills, Asian human services. Metropolitan is on. Skills, perfect. Hey, Lupe, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Hi, everybody.
Good. Let's give everybody about 1 or 2 more minutes to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hi.
Anybody else has joined us? Anybody that actually called in, if I didn't say your organization's name, just go ahead and type it in the chat box because it's only coming up with your numbers and not your actual name. See, Sarah's on from Peoria Public Schools. Perfect.
Yes, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. All right, looks like we're missing 3 groups, so I do want to have everybody on. So let's give them 1 more minute. Like I said, if you called in, please put in the chat box what agency, because it's not showing up with your name. It's just showing up with the numbers. Perfect. Yep, Asian Human Services. I see you. Perfect. All right, I'm going to make a few announcements. As everyone knows, I sent out an email on yesterday. There are lots of organizations that are either hiring new people or putting new people into different roles regarding their grants. So if you could please send me back the information regarding who's putting in the information for Illinois WorkNet, IWDS, who's doing your GRS system updates. If you could send that to us back by Friday, just so we know, who in the organization we should be working with. Also, please make sure every organization has a designated grant manager. This is the person that we will put on the emails. So that person and then one other backup person. But our goal is not to put everybody on there, because what happens is if there's any staff turnover, then we have to constantly keep sending out the same email that says, hey, take Mallory off, or take, Sarah off, or whatever. So if you could designate on there who's the grant manager and then who's the other person we should add to the emails, that'll be perfect. I do have it from 3 organizations right now, so we're just waiting on the other 4. and then we'll be good to go. So I will send you out something on either Friday, if I get everybody's by Friday, or Monday, that says, here's our final list of grant managers. And then our expectation is that we're sending the information directly to the grant manager, and then they will send it to whoever in their organization needs that information. So if it's a GRS issue, they'll send that to the GRS designated person. If it's like a case file thing, they'll send that to their case file person. So that's how we'll operate on that going forward. Also, don't forget, we do have the training on the 20th so that you can bring your case files in. Barbara will be looking over those. She asked for 5, at least 5 per agency. So if you're having any issues with that, please email us before. Everyone definitely should have a login for Illinois WorkNet and for IWDS. If there's anybody in your organization that does not have their logins, please email me immediately so that I can go ahead and send you out the forms and we can get you registered with those different systems. Does anybody have any other questions before we start with our presentation from Jodie today? Okay.
Sarah, I have a question. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Do we have our own release forms that we sign for our files when we're putting our files together?
Yeah, that should be something your agency has. And if you don't, I would highly encourage every agency, especially dealing with youth, to have a release form, because if you're talking to schools or you're talking to employers, sometimes that can be a big barrier if you don't have those release forms available.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Also, during this webinar, if something sparks you and you want more information on a different topic, please email me. We really want to set up these webinars so that they're beneficial for you all and that we're actually addressing your needs and concerns. So if there's any other topics that you feel like, hey, I need to revisit that, that's more than fine. Just send us an email so that way we can go ahead and get a presenter lined up, and that way we can get everything going. Anybody else have any last minute questions before we get to Jodie? Awesome. Jodie, again, thank you so much for completing this webinar for us. It is all yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. So today, what I want to do is, like, just in the time that we have, to give you some insights into how do I know that what you're probably right now trying to do, besides set up the programs because you're new, but also recruiting youth. But one of the big issues is engaging, motivating, and getting the full participation of the youth. So I have been working in the social service field for 40 years. And when I started out, I did the same job that many of you do now. I work with young people who needed to complete their education because they'd withdrawn from high school and they needed to find work. And so the vast majority of my clients were from families that were receiving like TANF, welfare, and lots of them had involvement with the juvenile justice system. Anyway, I operated as a program operator, a case manager, a job developer, a recruiter, a classroom training instructor, basically because the program was so lightly staffed. Everybody had to do everything. So at 40 years later, I still travel around doing training and technical assistance, not only with youth programs, but with the other WIOA, TANF, and other type programs. So here's the basic agenda for today. Too click happy. What I want us to do, it's very simplified. So I've divided the session into 2 components. In the first half, what we're going to look at is how quickly youth sometimes lose motivation as they move through the process that we've created. I know for myself that one of the big challenges that we always had, I mean, it was an everyday challenge, was recruiting out of school youth, because they don't, they don't conglomerate at some specific area. They're all over the community. And so the difficult part is when you finally get somebody in and they, seem like they'd be interested in the program, then they would lose motivation somewhere through the intake process, the assessment process, or, maybe when we were first providing a service. So they lose motivation in the system. And what I know from my years of experience in working with workforce programs is that you can't fix what you don't see. So what I want us to do is look a little bit about why do people lose motivation? And then in the second half, we're going to construct a more motivational process and look at techniques and strategies that will build motivation or maintain it. So if you have questions, simply ask me and I'll stop and answer them, and I'll find out along the way whether or not you have questions. So I know that webinar formats make that a little bit more complex, but I'm sure that we'll be able to work around it. So to get us started, very important to building motivation, engagement, and participation is to look at all of the component pieces of the processes that youth would have to go through and evaluate along the way what's working for us and what is not. So we're going to be looking at the program from the youth's perspective to identify points at which motivation sometimes wanes. You're going to see as we move through 2 clients that I created. One I named her Shauna Potts, and one I named Anita Jobs. So what I want to do is walk through the program with Shauna and Anita to get a sense of what they think and feel as they encounter the work program. So by looking at the system through their eyes, we can identify what needs to be fixed in order to build their motivation. So for all of the clients, including Shauna and Anita, the beginning of the journey is when they walk into the door and show up in your office, oftentimes like in a waiting area. And in the best case, the journey ends with them getting a job or them enrolling into some type of school, joining the military, getting on a career path. So what we're going to do is I want after this webinar even is to always be looking at the system through your client's perspective, through the youth's perspective. So for the client, I said like their journey begins when they walk into the program. Your youth is going to decide whether or not to commit or whether or not to just go through the motions based in part on what happens at those initial appointments. So, you know, most youth when they walk into the door, any client is looking for a solution to a problem. And during their entire experience, they're going to be evaluating what is the value to them. If it meets their needs, they're likely to commit. And if they're not convinced that the program has value, then they'll do either the minimum that is required to maintain their involvement, and some won't even do that. They just fall away. But oftentimes when programs are set up, staff look at what are the requirements. What do I have to accomplish to meet our contractual goals, or what do I have to accomplish in order to make sure that we're checking all the boxes, you know, on our grant, on our funding. And then we design the system around our needs. What do we need? Because that seems like that would be the most efficient way to do the work. But designing program services around the agency's needs and not the youth's needs creates serious problems for the agency, because programs end up with high numbers on the not participating list. Clients just fade away. And my own experience is it's really difficult to re-engage people. I mean, sometimes, you know, onesies, twosies, we can re-engage. But oftentimes, once a person decides, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do this anymore, the amount of energy it takes to get them back in is high, and the success rate isn't really all that good. So a far better approach for building motivation, commitment, participation is to design the process around the customer's needs while still meeting our needs, but their needs come first. So the client should always be front and center in terms of how we provide our services. So What I'm basically suggesting is that to design the program effectively, or to make powerful changes in an already designed program, you want to focus on the perspective of your participants. So when you become them, you put yourselves in their shoes and you walk a mile, you have a much better chance of developing true empathy for what they're going through and what works and what doesn't work. So we're going to begin the journey with, here's Anita on our left and here's Shauna on our right. And look as they first walk in just how happy they are. So one of the first steps, and actually this is all derives from something, you can look it up on internet. It's called customer journey mapping. Customer journey mapping is a concept. It's a tool that are used by private sector, by nonprofit sector, in order to look at what is our customers' experience. So the first step is to identify all of the steps and processes that your youth, your customer is going to go through. So this is just a partial list, in no way intended to be complete, but it gives you an example of the kind of service that we offer and the way in which a customer might travel through it. So phoning in, and then they walk in, they wait in the office. Then after they wait in the office, they're brought in for some type of orientation. Maybe they're doing intake and assessment. And again, in your program, it might not be in this order, but you want to look at every, what I'm going to call touch point that is an interface between you and your customer. So anytime a client, a youth, comes in contact with your program, you have an opportunity to influence their motivation to the positive or to the negative. And in customer journey mapping, any point at which the customer comes in contact with your program is called this touch point. So this list is simply a starting point, really. I mean, each of those touch points do require a deeper dive, because even intake and assessment might have multiple components. So I only did it at the highest level. I would, if I were doing intake, I'd need to list every single form, every single process that the customer moves through. And again, we're going to look at it from Anita and Shauna's experience, not from our own. So what we're trying to do is then to look at the system from the client's perspective to figure out what are the motivational potholes. So we're going to look at the system in slow motion, step by step, to figure out what kind of things we need to build into program design. And we're going to discover these potholes along the way. So this is a little bit like that TV show, if you've ever watched it, Undercover Boss. The boss goes in anonymously and works with staff to figure out what's working and what's not working for the decisions that have been made at headquarters. So it's seeing it from a different perspective that allows the undercover boss to see the flaws and inefficiencies that make it difficult for the employees and the customers. So we want to do the same thing, view the system from this new perspective, and that's the clients. So we bring them into the office, and our first interaction is that the client comes into the office. Although maybe you've done like a presentation out in the community, and you're doing a presentation in front of youth, and that would be your first point of contact. But for me, for today, the client comes into the office and they're sitting in the waiting room, and they're waiting for a case manager or a staff member to come and get them. I just want to point out that when people are sitting in the office, they are not sitting there as a blank slate. They have thoughts and emotions about being at the office. So oftentimes they don't even understand why they're there. I mean, I got a lot of referrals from probation, and the probation officer told them go over to it was called 70,001, the 70,001 program. They really had no more information than that. But here they were because they were trying to please their probation officer. And so oftentimes they don't understand why they're there, who they're seeing, and what this is all about. And they may be thinking, as Shauna is, like, who am I going to get and how much longer am I going to be here? Because when you're waiting, and you guys know this from waiting at a doctor's office, 5 minutes feels like 2 hours. Or Anita is sitting there nervous and saying, well, what if I say something wrong? I'm nervous. So just like at a doctor's office, our customers are not blank slate. So if you're like me, at a doctor's office, I'm thinking you better be running on time because my time's valuable. Or if he's running late, like, why didn't they call me and tell me he's running late so I could show up late? So it's not like you're sitting there with nothing on your mind. So this is the first point to me that we could, I think, be motivating people. So could use when they walk in, as an example, depends on the program and how you're structured, but could they get a packet of outcomes that they could expect? Like, I don't know, a list of employers who are working with your program so that they can start seeing themselves working at these jobs, or a flyer on the various vocational training programs that that you work with, just a sample set, or maybe it's a list of GED providers or academic options, or community service sites that they can work on, depending on what the nature of the program is, the services that you're offering. I want the time that they're spent to be visioning themselves already in the program. What choices would they make? So basically, how can I make this waiting time, any waiting time, pleasant and hopeful rather than sitting there nervously? I want them to be dreaming, not fretting. So then poor Shauna comes into this program, and she doesn't even get an orientation to the overall program. The case manager immediately begins by doing initial assessment. Shauna doesn't understand what the program is about or what's required at this point. She hasn't even really figured out what questions she has because she doesn't understand enough about it. And because she doesn't understand the program nor the benefits that she can hope for, it's really going to be difficult for her to help to make choices about her future. So she's likely to go along to get along, but she's not going to have any commitment to the choices that are made for her, or that she feels somehow like she was directed into. Now, Anita had a different experience. She got directed into an orientation, whether or not that's group or it's one-on-one. But what it ended up being was a highly technical description of the program. So here's an example of a bureaucratic orientation, one that is about the process and not about the youth, not about the needs, the problems that they came in looking for solutions to. It's rule-based. So mission, history of the organization, and honestly, youth don't care about that stuff. We care about it. They don't care. We go over eligibility requirements, show them, what our training calendar is, tell them the rules, who the staff are, what are all the steps in the process. Then they get to take the TABE or the CASAS. There's nothing on this list that is motivational, and it's not fun. And I want you to come in and have fun and go, if this is a sample of what you have, I definitely want some. So then oftentimes the next step is for Shauna, because she didn't even get an orientation, her first step is doing impersonal paperwork, forms, signing documents. And while Anita got an orientation, it wasn't really a helpful experience. So she moves into the initial assessment meeting already a little bit overwhelmed and confused about what this is about. So and many of the forms and things that we use with our clients are data collection, such as, do you have a valid driver's license? Do you have any criminal convictions? Do you have, did you graduate from high school, and the like? And these are yes or no questions, or short answer type questions, and they don't really invite discussion and sharing. They're not relationship building. They don't really build trust. So it sort of seems to me that it would be a much more motivational approach to begin at least the initial, and it could be 10 minutes before I turn them over to the forms, to begin that initial meeting without the forms and documents, and begin with something a little bit more like tell me your story type questions that engage the youth and give them a chance to explain what is happening in their lives and what brought them there, so that they feel a little bit more of a connection. Now, one of the things, because as I do consulting, I will sit down and I go through processes to figure out what kind of things do we need to change in order to make get higher levels of motivation, participation, and engagement. And one of the things that I recommend is going through any paperwork that you give them, whether or not it's brochures, these release forms, whether or not, like, no matter what it is, descriptions of the classes, and look at those, because oftentimes the reading level in these things are way too high. Sometimes I found that the tone in them is harsh, and I think, what does that do to motivation? So an example, and this is real, what I'm going to show you is real. I don't make anything up because I'm actually too darn lazy. I've taken off anything that would show you where it's at, but let's look at this. Hopefully that music gave you a little bit of opportunity to read this, but the way I read this, if you're missing any eligibility documentation, and who talks like that? Nobody talks like that. You will have 14 calendar days to provide it to the intake specialist. If you don't provide this within 14 days, we're going to take away your firstborn male child. You're going to be deemed ineligible and have to begin this all over. It just sounds harsh. It just sounds to me, from a youth perspective, I'd be like, I don't even want to be around these people. And this was written for a youth program. And I think, boy, this needs a lot of work. And also, if I ran a readability test on it, I think the readability is way high. I took that slide out just because, in the interest of time, but I believe that this was written at an 11.6 grade level, and most of the youth wouldn't even know what they're reading. But then we also do this thing, and I see this all the time on forums and in verbal discussions, at orientations. We use language that focuses on weakness, language that focuses on what's wrong with you. So if we look a little deeper at some of the forums and conversations that we have, we might be saying things that turn people off. So one of those, and I hear it all the time in workforce, we talk about, oh, well, we've got clients who have lots of barriers. They have multiple barriers to employment. That is a word that we use all the time. And so, if you step back and you look at that word, what is a barrier? It's a fence. It's an obstacle. It prevents movement. It prevents access. It's a circumstance. It stops people. So think of a barrier on a highway. It says, stop, don't go this way. It's a negative word. And it's a negative word that I think has psychological impact. So, because imagine, like, if a stranger walked up to you, never met this person, and they're starting a conversation with you, and the stranger starts the conversation with, hey, do you know what your problem is? My guess is this is not likely to be somebody that you're going to develop a fondness for. So what happens is, this next slide. I don't know how that song was ever number one. The way I found it was look up depressing music. But like, look at all those barriers on the left-hand side. They make people feel bad. Are you deficient in basic literacy skills? Or are you an ex-offender, a long-term unemployed, a high school dropout? You'll even notice that although everybody I work with when I first started in the workforce field, all of them were, I guess you could call them high school dropouts. I don't call them that. I call them youth who left school prior to graduation. That's a behavior. That is not a label. I don't want to label people. I think that what we want to do is, label jars, not people. This makes people feel judged. And so I was attending a job search workshop as a client, because what I was doing was witnessing the job search, so I could figure out what were ways that they could get more of their clients to be engaged and to make the training a little bit more participatory. So anyway, during the break, the customers didn't know who I was, although they could have thought I was a new person there, although I was well over the age. But during break, I was talking to several of the people who were there, and I asked them, how long have you been in the program? Just like during the break, having a general chit chat. And one of them told me, she said, I've been coming here for a really long time. It was like 4 months or 6 months. She goes, but she goes, I've been coming here a really long time, but I have multiple barriers to employment. And I thought to myself, basically I got like sort of a pit in my stomach, because I thought there is no way that young woman woke up in the middle of the night and sat up in bed and thought to herself, wow, I've got multiple barriers to employment. Obviously, she has heard that term. That term's been used with her. There's no way that she just made it up. And so she's heard it. And so now she's like wearing it around her shoulders like an excuse for why she can't make progress. So I was really saddened by the comment. But I think for me, looking at it from the customer standpoint, the youth standpoint, how does that impact Shauna? It impacts her as, I have so many barriers, I won't make it. Like, what's the use in trying? So I think it's a motivational pitfall. Then we move to monthly case management. We're going to just move ahead real quick. And I know when to skip a few steps, but let's move forward to that. Those monthly case management appointments. Sometimes the client may just be dropping off timesheets, dropping off grades, picking up supportive services, updating their plans. They have to get value out of those meetings. But depending on how that meeting is structured and organized, and we're going to come back and look at that here in a couple minutes, and depending on the sequence in which things are covered, it can be superficial and perfunctory, where customers are like, I don't even need to go to that. I don't get anything out of it. Or it can be a useful, valuable meeting. And again, I'm going to show you an agenda here in a bit. Bottom line, cutting to the chase, it's where's the motivation? In essence, our clients already have hard lives, and maybe they've made some bad decisions, or maybe they've had hard childhoods, they've had bad circumstances, but our job is to lift them up and give them hope and move beyond those circumstances and strive for something better for themselves. So what I want to do now is move through quickly a more motivational approach. So again, every touch point should be building motivation. I've already given you a couple suggestions, but every single point of interaction, every time we touch a client, I have to be able to step back and say, what are we doing in terms of building their motivation? So we want to use motivational strategies. Everybody dance. So what I want to do is inspire them, encourage them, excite them, support them, motivate them, energize them. And I want them to see the services that we have to offer as an opportunity for this success. So I want them excited when they walk into the office and meet with their case managers, have hope for this better future. I mean, I'm confident that's what you guys all want as well. So I step back and I look and I think, in my experience, in your experience, which of these most accurately depicts the motivation of the person coming into you? Remember, they come in because they're looking for solutions to problems. So if we start at the beginning, when they walk through the door, is anybody standing outside the office thinking, wow, I hope I get an individual employment plan today? What my life's been missing is an IEP. No. They also, I don't think, are coming in because they want help becoming self-sufficient, like being able to move away from their parents, stand on their own 2 feet. Self-sufficiency is a word that we use. It is not one that our customers use. They generally, the youth, whether to me, they were wanting to go to the military, vocational training school, get a job, get an OJT, an apprenticeship, what they really wanted was money. And so if what they want is money, then it sort of seems to me that's the theme that we want to sell as they're moving through the program. So if money's the motivator, then our theme should be about money, helping them to get a steady income, to have more financial security in their life, even if part of that plan ends up getting a GED, getting a vocational training, and then getting a job. That end point is financial security, steady income. And if that's what brought them in, that's what I need to sell. So you've got to put together an orientation. And it sort of seems to me orienting them to the program is the best first step. That orientation should be participatory, it should be fun, and it has to translate all these difficult concepts into plain English that are in their words. It also has to overcome some common misconceptions, like we just have jobs in file drawers and, we just pull them out, or rumors, like you're the place where I can get my free daycare, where, yeah, we do that, but that's not really what we're about. So I'm just going to show you quickly. I could do a whole webinar just on orientations, but so I want it to be energetic. Actually, I would be playing music during the orientation as they were waiting, just because I think it's fun. This is much more fun and interesting orientation. And everywhere that you see yellow on this slide, everywhere you see yellow is an engagement activity and generates participation. So it is not a talking head. We're going to do a little get acquainted group. Even if I'm one-on-one, I'm going to say, tell me about yourself. So this can translate either way. What is it that you want to make sure? What questions do you have? What do you want to make sure that I answer? We're going to do something on how it works, training, scholarships, jobs, career advancement. And maybe I'm going to give them a check sheet, and I'll talk about each of those subjects. And I want to them to put a check mark beside any of those that are of interest to them, so that then when they meet with their case manager, we already have a list of those things that spark their interest. It takes a team, it's sort of a game. You can look this up on Google, call it triangle team building activity. And basically it just is it's one of those little quick games where you have to count triangles. And when you do it by yourself, you don't do so well, but when you do it with others, you always come closer to the real answer, because people see things that maybe you didn't see. And that gives me license to talk about how together with all of the staff, we work as a team with you, and you're going to interact with lots of different staff people, because everybody's got different perspectives, and helps us come closer to putting together the best program for you. We're going to do a goal setting activity, which is, what is it that you want? How do you want your life to be at the end of all of this? What are you working for? And then questions and answers. What I do want you to notice is that I put the intake stuff at the end, because that's not the thing that is going to grab them and excite them. It's like you're going fishing and you got to put the the right bait on the hook. I want to review the, so my theme is my underlying assumption. They're here checking you out. Just because they walk through the door does not mean that they bought into this. They have to be sold on why this is going to be a good place for them. So I put stand by me because that's actually how I want them to feel, that we are right beside them the whole step of the way. If you remember that old nasty way of saying we need all these eligibility documentations, otherwise we're going to take away your firstborn male child, here's a simple rewrite. And I want you to notice that on this, the reading level is 4.8. Our clients can read it. We're excited that you've taken the first step to working with us to find a job that's right for you, or a job, a career, training. We're going to help you free of charge. But first, we need you to get a few simple but important papers. Hey, if you have problems getting any of these, let us know. We're here to help. But remember, before you can get our services, we need you to bring in everything that has been checked. This makes it sound like, oh, these people seem so nice. I want to be around them. So I am really saying you have to walk through in slow motion and figure out anything that might be doing that could be off-putting to our customers. I talked a bit about how we don't want to say barriers, and I don't think we want to say barriers because because it's negative. But what can we change our language to be? And to me, it's life challenges. I mean, how about everyone has challenges in their life that they have to plan around. We all have to cope with different things. So what I want to talk about with you are what are some of the challenges that you face, and how can we plan together to handle those, to work around those. Because, like, think about it. Do any of us have perfect lives? No. I mean, I have upstairs, I have a mother-in-law who's 89 years old who has Alzheimer's, who lives with us. I have caregivers living 24/7 in our house. I have a brother who just had a double lung transplant. I have a niece who was in financial disaster. I don't have kids, but I was like her mother. Like, I got stuff. I have things in my life that make my life not perfect, and I'm sure that you guys do too. But those don't stand in our way. Those aren't barriers to our success. We just have to figure out workarounds. And that's what I think how we need to talk to our customers, is we need to figure out some workarounds. So repositioning the negative into a hopeful and into a positive helps me to have a more motivated customer. So here's a way of wording some things. So let's talk about, or you have some challenges or challenges that, some situations or challenges that we're going to need to plan around. And maybe it sounds like we're going to need to work on a plan for transportation instead of saying lax transportation. Or it looks like, because you haven't had a lot of work experience yet, what we want to work toward is building a broader work experience, or work on a plan for child care. Or instead of saying offender, ex-offender, blah, 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 we're going to need to find employers or career areas where legal history isn't going to be an issue. What I want them to do is to feel like it is proactive, and that they walk out feeling hopeful and accepted rather than depressed and embarrassed. So I think the language here sounds much more positive. It's not like they've got a monkey on their back. Now, one of the things, and I said this at orientation, it's hard to do, but one of the critical parts of motivation is having goals and dreams to get people out of their comfort zones. Much longer webinar on that in motivational interviewing. But what you need to do is help them imagine a different kind of future. So it basically is, I have to get them to see where it is that they want to be at the end of all of this. And people have to dream before they can set goals. And by the way, I am not talking about goals like program goals. I'm talking about life goals, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But the more I can get the client to dream about how things could be, the more actually dissatisfied they are with where they're at right now, which helps them to make steps toward progress, toward change. And I'll show you that, again, an example of that here in a second, what kind of dreams and goals that I'm talking about. But here is a tool that you could implement that you can use. Erie, Pennsylvania uses this. It's useful to identify your goals and how you want your life to be once you're out of school and working, or once you're working, because it's going to help you to stay motivated. So think and list 5 ways that your life would be better off if you had a steady income, financial security, if you were working at a higher wage job, whatever your words are, and you have them list those. That helps people to dream. And it's the dream that I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about with the customer. So let me show you a program goal. These are not powerful. So don't confuse these with life goals. Getting a GED, that isn't the goal. It's the why behind getting the GED. It's not getting a certificate. It's why do you want this certificate? Maybe it's because they want to start at a higher paying job, like a nursing certificate, or maybe they want to help people. Getting a GED because I want to prove to people that I'm smart enough to be able to do it. Or maybe it's because I want to quit lying about the fact that I actually left school without my diploma. It's get a job. Nobody really wants a job. They want the money. So these are just steps that you take, and they're steps that we offer, but these are not the ultimate goals, and these are easy to quit. These are much more powerful. What are your goals? Notice they're personal, and they relate directly to that individual client. So this is what they're working for. These are the goals that I want them to vocalize and to write down, because if I lose them, there are 3 pieces of information you have to re-engage someone. If you don't have these pieces of information, re-engaging is going to be very, very, very difficult. So I need to know what service interested them the most. So remember, at orientation, do you want job training, classroom training, apprenticeship? I need to know what is the service that really that was the bait that they bit while it was on the hook. I need to know what their life goals are. What is it that they were working toward? And also, sometimes customers just complain. It's like, oh, I hate living with my parents because they're always treating me like I'm, still a teenager, and they're trying to tell me what to do, blah, 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 whatever it is. What people hate about their life right now is can be turned into a motivator. So it sounds like what you want to be able to do is get the kind of training and job that so that you have the kind of income that affords you the opportunity to get an apartment on your own. I hate riding the bus, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a complaint. That's what they hate. Well, it sounds like one of the goals that you have is being able to get your own transportation. So I need those 3 pieces of information. Then I can use those goals to help them begin to write a plan. I use those at every case management appointment to talk to them about whatever it is that their goal was. Like, say they wanted to get an apartment. Maybe I'm going to get an apartment finder, one of those little booklets that every community has, and say, like, take a look. Like, let's look at how much does it cost to actually be able to do this, so that we can back that into the plan. Or let's look at what type of place that you're looking for, whether a garden apartment, a townhouse, a single family. I mean, for most clients, it's going to be an apartment, but do they need to have roommates? Like, I want them to expand that dream. So, sometimes these goals seem far away, hard to reach, and sometimes they get out of focus So that's why I want to begin every case management meeting talking about their goals, because I have to keep their goals in plain sight. And then I can renew their slipping motivation by using those goals. So here's an example. Inclusion of the dream is critical to this ongoing case management and continued motivation and change. So I might start off with, you're really taking some very important steps toward making a better life for your children. I'm assuming that on the goal thing, what they said was they wanted to make a better life or be able to have more because they have a daughter. And then I'll go into the case management. You're in school, you're making good progress. You only have 4 weeks left, all perky, all positive. I'd like to talk about any steps that you've taken since our last conversation, and then talk about what's next. How are you feeling about going school right now? And so give them this opportunity to use us as real coaches. And, you know, I want them to view me. I think it was on ER. It's on one of those shows, Grey's Anatomy maybe. Like, I want to be their person. Like when they're, something's going on. We all have a favorite friend that we like to call when we want to talk something over. That's who I want to be with the youth. So in reference to that, I suggested to you that I was going to show you ongoing case management appointment. On the left side, we have an uninspired agenda, update of what they've done since the last meeting, collect documents from them, timesheets, you know, OJT things, classroom schedules, grades, blah, blah, blah. I tell them what they forgot that I still need a copy of. I give them supportive service vouchers, and then we set up for the next meeting. That's not really all that inspiring. I think a much more engaging meeting and format would be to, first of all, start off by talking about their goals. How's your daughter? You know, talk about the apartment, talk about what's important to them. I had a youth one time who told me he was getting his GED because he wanted to give his grandmother the gift of watching him walk across the stage and collect the diploma. Because she had raised him, and he wanted to do that for her. And so what we always talked about was his grandmother, because I knew that she was so important to him. And when his motivation started slipping and he started attending the GED classes with less frequency, I asked him, it's like, so Stan, let me ask you, how many hours per week are you willing to invest to be able to give your grandmother this gift? So always I go back to what's important to them. Then I'm going to answer any questions, answer questions about you know, what's happening in school, their job search. I'm going to update any progress that they've made. Then we're going to set the plan for what's going to happen next. Then I'm going to collect documents and issue vouchers, because I want you to notice this second to the last step, that's about us and our needs. That's not about them. The first 4 steps are about them. And then I'll set up the next meeting. So case management shouldn't just happen. We should walk in there with some type of a plan. Sorry, my finger went backwards. So basically, my question is to all the programs that I work with and do consulting with is you have to step back and think, what journey do we want to create for the youth? Do we want a need at the end of this to be excited and thankful that she found our program, or are we going to set it up so that it's sort of a exercise in frustration? It meets our needs, but not necessarily their needs. So what I tried to do was just hit high points of things that I've seen as I've traveled around in the past 40 years. And I'll open it up. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to be able to end early enough to be able to answer any questions or thoughts or hear what you guys have to say. And I'm listening. This is the part where you talk and I listen.
Everybody's been unmuted if you want to ask a question.
I just
just want to know where everybody is in the process right now. So for our groups that have not started entering folks in the system, are you guys still at the recruitment phase to where you're still putting materials together, or are you having, like Jodie talked about, those one-on-one conversations? So maybe we should just start at the top of the list and just kind of work our way down and kind of get a little bit from each agency. So Asian Human Services, where are you guys at?
We're a little bit mixed. We have two programs here. One of them has been around for a couple of years, so we're just, we're kind of set in the way that we do things, kind of adding some stuff in with what we've heard today. And then we have a new program that's kind of more focused on bringing people in, although we're all set up for that, so we're really focused on the recruitment part for the second program.
And do you guys already have your like materials and stuff and folks identified? Or are you still like identifying people?
We have like some materials, but this was actually really helpful because we're kind of noticing right now a lot of our recruiting is done on Indeed, and we're just noticing that we're not able to like get people in even when they make appointments, or when they come they're not coming back. So we've been kind of reviewing our intake process right now. So this was pretty like right on time for us.
And I'm going to ask the question to the state. You're going to send this PowerPoint out to people, right?
Yeah, I can send it out now. Do you want me to send the one that you sent this morning? I mean, yesterday?
Send the PDF, because I have so much graphics and music. What happens is the file's too big. So, but that way they would have some actual wording, and maybe after this to be able to sit around and discuss as a staff, you know, what way they want to go. So yeah, I think that would be, I mean, if they think it's helpful, but I'm giving you permission to send it out.
It is in their email right now.
Great, thanks.
Uh-huh. And then the next BCS, where are you guys at with the process?
Oh, did you say Peoria Public Schools?
No, BCS.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Well, let's do the public schools.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you guys are ready.
I thought you said PPS for Peoria Public Schools.
Oh,
sorry to jump in. Yeah, we are currently working with 17 students, so we've done the recruiting, and we are getting ready to recruit for the next school year, and hoping to double our numbers for next year. And so I'm fairly new and still learning how to do all the data entry, but definitely doing a lot of the case management right now. We're working one-on-one with all of our students. They're just finishing up their certifications and are ready to go out for their work-based learning internships, kind of like the pre-apprentice opportunities. So pairing them with employers and getting all the necessary documents and signatures. I guess one question I had is, you know, it feels easy to work with them now, but once they graduate and we need to follow up with them for another year, I just wondered, Jodie, if you had any tips on how to keep them engaged when they aren't a student any longer.
Yeah, that actually, I would suggest to the state, that's an entire, I mean, I could give you quick suggestions and I will, but that's like an entire process, and that is a struggle for all programs across the whole country. One of the things that I would just suggest here quickly is what oftentimes happens is because we didn't sell that at the very beginning, it ends up like once I got what I want, which is in school, a job, you know, whatever, I feel like, okay, I'm done. And
Right.
I'll call you if I need something, but otherwise leave me alone. But
Right.
that's why I think that what we need to be selling right up front from the very beginning is that, like the program is, what we're all about is helping you to be able to become, you know, more, whatever you want the word to be, financially secure, or to increase your income even after you get a job, or after you're in school. So we want to we're going to continue to work with you. So once you get it, you know, you get leave the program and do whatever, it depends on what the program is, but we want to help you to, like, say that you start on a job, how do you get promotions? How do you get raises? How do you increase your hours? Or maybe it's in school is, applying for grants and scholarship. You have to think through what is the value to them after placement, because right now, again, from our standpoint, it's just that we have to do it. And it's for our performance, and you have to be able to sell to them what's the value to them, because anytime there is not value, they drop off the face of the earth. But that's a much longer conversation in terms of how to do it. But that's the first step. Otherwise, it's a bait and switch.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other group that wants to share?
Hey, Tara, sorry, this is Eddie. I was speaking, but I had muted my phone, so I'm talking to myself.
So where are you guys at in the process?
So we start both of our first cohorts on Monday. So out in the Southland, or in the South Side, out of St. Sabina, and then also on the West Side, out of Austin. So in Austin, we have about 12 currently in the pipeline that we are, just kind of finishing up intakes for and certifications, and then I think another 8 to 10 in the South Side.
Okay. Perfect. Let us know how that goes with everything and getting that up for Monday.
Sounds good.
All right. Anybody else want to share before we wrap up today?
Hi, Tara. It's Lupe.
Hey.
Hey, so we have 17 students, and our outreach methods that have been working very well is just presentations in the community, also social media.
Perfect. All right, everybody. It is actually 11 o'clock. Is there anybody else with any last minute questions for Jodie? I did send everyone the PowerPoint, so if you have any additional questions, please look over the PowerPoint and let us know. Any last minute questions before we wrap up? Jodie, do you have anything else?
Nope. I just want to thank everybody for sticking with me for the hour. And, hopefully you can take some of this and really apply some of the practical techniques.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Jodie, again. And everyone, like I said, let us know if you have any questions, any ideas that you have for future webinars. Please email us so we can go ahead and get those subject matter experts ready to go. All right, everybody, have a great day. And don't forget to send that stuff in on Friday about who's doing what for your programs. Other than that, we will see everyone on the 20th. Have a great one.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.